Hey there, rulers. Welcome back to the Teacher's Lounge here on Ruler School, your favorite ever live Force of Will podcast featuring myself, Jeremy Franklin, and I am joined today by the lovely, the beautiful Ryan Miles. Lots of hand motions. The gorgeous, the eclectic Mike Rance.
That's me. Yay.
And we will be joined later by the mysterious and other adjective, Brandon Fremont.
Oh, I love other adjectives. My favorite adjective.
Nailed it. So, as always, before we get started, if you like what we're doing here on the channel, we're so happy to have you guys join us. But if you like what we're doing, you can click that join button down below. It is the easiest way to directly support the channel. It gets you access to all kinds of cool things like the emotes, shout outs in the videos, name in the credits, get to have deck doctors, all kinds of stuff. We also just unlocked a new emote, everybody's favorite uwu emote, as Imul. So, Imul, thanks to everyone who's joined us and member, the 14 new members we got during the Collinsville GP. Super thankful for all that support. We have unlocked our new emote. And I will say, when we get 19 more members at this point, we will unlock an IU emote to have in the chat. So I'm looking at you, Minha. You want to get that IU emote, you better start getting people to join as members. But enough about that. Let's talk about the three new rulers. Particularly, we have the differences that we're seeing with these new rulers. For those of you who haven't seen, hopefully you have, but if you're watching the official Force of Will page, spoiler season has started, and with it came the biggest part of the three new Buy a Box rulers, which are Gil, Dark Alice, and Magna. And the biggest thing about them is none of these rulers have extra decks of any kind. No rune deck, no stranger deck. Magna can play strangers in his main deck, but we'll get to that. But no extra deck at all in any kind. And it's also a big change. There's some other big changes to them that we'll talk about here in a little bit. So before we get into that, what is your gentleman's first reaction upon seeing the fact that suddenly the extra deck is gone from these new rulers?
I literally didn't even notice it at first when they first revealed them.
Until you said this, actually. I just assumed that the had stranger decks.
Like, I found out afterwards, like, I'm not an idiot like Ryan, but I knew eventually, but I didn't notice at first. I'm like, oh, okay, cool, yeah. Judgment, effect, okay, cool, fine. Stranger ruler with Energize.
I read the cards and saw that I couldn't play Kaguya for 2 in those decks, so they were immediately deleted from my mind. That's as far as I got.
That's pretty fair, too, yeah.
Excellent. Well, the one thing to also note here is that just as a heads up for those of you who might not be aware, none of these rulers have the energized text on the card themselves, and we'll go into that when you see them here when I pull them up. But they didn't get rid of energize. They have now.
Why is Ryan in the middle of our video?
Ryan, buddy, I need you to rein it in, buddy.
You muted me from a beautiful opening song. All this energy and obnoxiousness is now pent up for the course of the episode.
That's fair. I will accept that punishment.
It's like giving your child sugar. You just can't do it.
I've done that before. It's a mistake.
25% off there, Ryan. Come on.
So we have Energize has now been transitioned to being a rule of the game. So this is one of the big, when they showed us the new rulers, when they showed us the new formatting, they talked about how there was going to be updates to the CR, there was going to be updates to the rules, everything else. This is one of them. One of the big changes obviously is going to be, we can imagine that they're going to update the images of what cards look like in the CR to reflect the new bordering, so that the new positioning of stuff to better explain it to new players. But also, Energize has now been permanently moved to the CR. We don't exactly know what the wording is yet because we haven't seen the CR. Everything that we have been hearing, that I've been hearing, is that it's going to be based on the ruler's front side. So the attribute of the ruler on the front is what you get as an Energize if you go second across the board, which is kind of cool because that also means that retroactively that will apply to every ruler that's ever been printed, even if they don't have Energize. So now, even as a rule, although most people playing Wanderer or Epic Stories have already been applying that rule, it's now an official addition to the rule set, which is very, very cool. So with that, we have three rulers to kind of talk about, because the biggest thing is with the change of no extra deck, there has been a big shift with the rulers themselves in terms of how the rulers themselves are designed, front and back, now that they won't have access to this kind of extra set of cards. So I think the point is, I have all three of them to pull up here. Do you guys want to talk about Magna, Dark Alice or Gil Lapis first. I'll let you guys kind of pick.
Let's start with Magna, because I think... So here's my theory on the rulers. I think that Magna was the one created first, which is why they created Ataraxia's Memoria to take advantage of the 5 colors. I think Gil Lapis was made second because he was on the artwork for Dark Indication.
Sure.
So whatever the card is that doesn't see play. So I think he was created second. And then Dark Alice has artwork that isn't just photoshopped new face and coloring on it. So I think that she was created last because more artwork budget.
That's a good deep hot take theory. So we're going to talk about Magna here. So Magna on his front, pretty straightforward ruler. Also Min, I didn't grab your Ayud looking version of it, but we just have the regular one. So Magna here is a 5 color ruler. He is a wizard. He has Judgment of 5 for one of each color. And the only other text he has on his front outside of his flavor text is, you may have Stranger Resonators in your deck. You may not have more than 1 copy of any Stranger Resonator in your deck. So when Strangers were first created, the idea was, in terms of you could see the design through line of them, is that they were high-powered, undercosted, locked to this random selection nonsense, right? So you could play 2 copies to maximize your chances of hitting the one you want, but pretty much across the board, they were overstated, undercosted, strong effects, whether continuous or enter effects. But they locked that behind the random wall. Magna, the person who in the lore created all the regalia, doesn't have that deck. He lost that deck, but he still has a very good connection line to those entities, and so they've moved him, the power of it, to the main deck itself, being that you can now play them in the main. That is a pretty big shakeup for even just the way you look at Strangers. Am I wrong?
No, you're very correct about it. But also, so my problem with Magna, other than the fact that I think he's kind of nuts in epic stories, but that's another topic we're not going to really dive into right now. I think that his big thing is that he gets access to just these stock powerful cards that don't really, for the most part, don't need a combo enabler with them. Like, you don't need an enabler, you just have the card on their own, except for like Sprout, but Sprout's like, Sprout. But the thing is, I think at this point in the game, Force Will is so synergy focused and so tied to like specific lines of play that need specific cards to go with them, that having one of powerful cards is not going to be... I mean, it's obviously, it's powerful, obviously, but I don't think it's going to be the meta shaker that it could be.
Sure.
The way that IU was, I would say. Because IU herself was the win con. Magna himself is not a win con. And I think that's the biggest difference.
The 2020, though.
That's true. We're going to flip over to his other side, just so we can talk about it. So his flip side here is Magna, the creator of Regalia. He is a 2020 that has enter, search your deck for a Stranger Resonator and put it into the field, then shuffle your deck. And then he has a God Art of 5 that says, destroy all other non-Stranger Resonator, non-Magic Stone entities. Your opponent cannot play spells or abilities until end of turn. So it's kind of like a pseudo Time Walk plus board wipe.
It kills J-Rulers, I just realized.
It does kill J-Rulers. It literally clears the board except for him, Strangers, Stones, and that's it. Everything else dies. And then says your opponent gets locked out for the time. It is a very expensive God Art, but for what it does, I mean, I think that's a pretty fair cost.
So the thing with him that like sticks out to me is like it kind of sucks that he has no like Regalia triggers on his front side.
Sure,
but you're still pretty incentivized to play Regalia because Regalia can pay for Strangers. So if you are playing Strangers in your main deck, you get to play all these Regalia and you get to tap these Regalia to play these Strangers. You're really just like ramping. And when you do actually flip, like these Regalia can just kind of pay for your God's Art if you're playing like a hodgepodge of them. And like depending on what the ratios are going to look like, there's also a lot of good synergistic cards with Strangers, no matter what they cost, because like they do cost less usually. So you've got March of the Dead, you've got Awakening of the Winged Lord, which cheat in Resonator cost 2 or less. Strangers that cost 2 or less are actually usually pretty powerful. So I think that's kind of where like, even though, like Mike was saying, combo is really where the format is at right now, there is still just enough raw value sitting in how
absolutely
powerful Strangers are And that God Art is a game ender. When it, like, sure, destroy everything, that's cool. Your opponent cannot play spells or abilities until the end of the turn. I have a 20/20. That's pretty good. I don't know.
The fact that we haven't seen spells or abilities before, like we've had like Law of Silence, where it's like cast it, can't play spells. They're like, all right, cool, let me just Vlad you for 10. This time you're like,
turn, like your turn is over. Like
we still have to see like what else comes with like what strangers we actually get. Azazel doesn't give swiftness to Jays, right? Okay, no,
he does not. But the other thing is too so the other thing to note is that you're talking about those regalia. The only regalia that I know of at this point in time that can pay for strangers, we have. Can Maribel pay for strangers?
Yes,
Maribel.
I think it's everything but Death Scythe and.
Yeah. So we've got 4 at this point that can pay, or 5 at this point because we have
more than 5, but no.
Reflex doesn't, and I don't think Prisia's does. Does it?
Prisia's I'm pretty sure does.
Okay, so we have some. We do have some, like you said, we have some. He is probably pretty incentivized. The other thing is he also is the only 5-color ruler, so Attoractia's Memoria is going to be a 5-color stone. The question becomes, like, what does that stone base look like if it's just for Attoractia's Memoria? Because that comes down to the age-old IU problem, where you had 4 stones that were dope, and then you had to figure out what your other 6 were. But unlike IU, the other thing to note here is with Magna is that the cards that aren't strangers is just regular 4-ofs. So like you're talking about in terms of card selection, like Awakening of the Winged Lord, you're talking about Regalia, you're talking about...
You can even dig through the deck with something like Gatekeeper of Elsavaria. Like you can just, like, if you have a hand of garbage strangers, you pitch them all and you just draw 5. It's just like, sure.
Exactly. So they've really kind of taken... So the idea here is that we've made all of these rulers have been like up to this point have been here's my package. Oh, I also get bonuses, right? Like the entity, the identity of the ruler isn't necessarily directly tied to the strangers. Arla is probably the clearest example of actually directly tying, but it's more of just like that you move them, not that you actually have them. Right. So like it's all kind of been like there's this centralized identity, and they also get the bonus of having this little random extra effect. It's not correctly tied. Magna is this big shift in that, where his identity is derived from strangers. And so that's their character design, and in terms of how they've made his deck is very focused on that. And so that's very kind of, to me, this guy, even though he's the first of the 3, and you're probably right that he was made first, is a real clear indication of them moving the oomph back to the ruler / J ruler, rather than like what we've had with the runes, what we've had with strangers, which is, okay, you're playing this ruler kind of because of what color he is.
Even stuff with like regalia triggers, like that's very much like tying your ruler to a set card that's in your deck. Magna is like the first real step away from that.
Right.
Just obviously switching over
by himself. Magna has like a power identity, which I think that's way back to when our rulers had very different, unique abilities on their fronts, very different, unique abilities on their backs. So it's kind of a throwback to that.
It's basically like tribal synergies, the way we have like Grim, Swordsman of Fire, just like this ruler is tied to a set type of card. Obviously, Stranger is somewhat different, but at the same time, it's like he's unique in the fact that he's the only one that can do what he does, but there's no value in the regalia that he plays, no Stranger deck, no Rune deck. It's just like raw him, and then your deck is your source of power.
Right, exactly.
Have a regalia, does he? Like I don't think he'll be getting one that doesn't. I guess like he's a creator of regalia, sure. But like,
we know he has one. We know we've seen in the lore of there's a stranger that talks about him like leaving the world because he's worried about what's going to happen to it. That he like goes back to his home to like prepare for the final fight, and he talks about him bringing his regalia. Genesis, that's what it's called.
I guess it's that giant thing on his back.
It's probably that giant cross thing on his back if we're looking at it, right? But we don't know what anything that is.
In terms of like applications of this card, like again with like the consistency thing of like combos, like you do just naturally have like you get to. I think March of the Dead is a really good card.
Yeah,
right, because like strangers that cost 2 when you play them for 1 sound really, really good. So I kind of want to be base black, right? Look at Corruption. That's a pretty good card. Makage Rhea into Black Wizard on turn 1 sounds like a pretty consistent, good turn.
That does sound very good. That does sound very good.
And then you get to like your 3-drop like strangers on turn 2. I think there is really something here. Like,
absolutely.
The abuse that you get to have with some of these cards, even though they're one-ofs. I mean, there's just a lot of like Dark Alice is a really good card. You already want to protect your grave because we just established that you're playing Black Wizard. So you probably would play Dark Alice. You want to just draw, like you were saying with the 1-drop Guardian of Elsevier.
Yeah.
Like draw, discard is just good. Like you've got a lot of cool things doing.
Hey, it removes from the game. Come on, man.
Well, Dark Alice doesn't do that. Stop talking, Mike.
Yeah.
I do want to hit the chat real quick. Gray Grumbler to asking why in the middle of a cluster based on stranger decks. I can't speak to why. I think part of it is this really does feel like the first set that I Spy has really kind of been able to reestablish. Like, I think at this point, pretty much anyone can say that they're probably not at a position of hurting for money, or at least at the point of like where they've stopped the bleeding, and so now they can kind of start rebuilding things. So that might be it, that they decided, hey, we want to kind of reestablish ourselves with this 4th set.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to kind of this is something that we were talking about before the stream actually started, where I was saying that this feels kind of like a future site set. For those of you who I kind of know mild magic things, and apparently there was a set that kind of like showcased some mechanics of things that could be down the road.
Sure.
And I think this is very much like, we changed the card text and the way that the cards are laid out. This is probably how it's going to be in the future. And then we see like we're going over from stranger decks. Now we're just going back to ruler-centered ruler power. Which
is honestly what Forcible started as, right? In terms of the identity of what set it apart as a card game was like the focus on this, your avatar you've chosen with the ruler. So we can't speak to exactly why they've decided to do it now, but that's probably at least part of it.
I'm fucking bored, dude. I'm just like sitting here before the Grand Prix, like, wow, I want to play these 40 cards. Now, do I want to play Hanzo or Brunhild?
Yeah, you definitely can't do that. Like, if we transition away from extra decks and we transition to these very like core identity rulers kind of as a thing, you're not going to see like, here's my 40, which ruler works best with it. You're going to see like, what kind of deck do I want to play? That's the ruler I have to play with, which I am all for, to be honest. I also see the question of when is DBV rotating? DBV will rotate alongside the rest of New Valhalla cluster when the next cluster drops its first set. So the idea being the August is my birthday weekend, the weekend of August 21st, August 21st, 22nd, 23rd is the release of Prologue of Attoractia. When that is set 4 of Alice Origins cluster, and then probably September, October, November, which is probably when Worlds will be, if Worlds is still going to happen this year. That'll be when the first set of the next cluster drops, and that will be when all of New Valhalla will rotate out. So bye, Kaguya.
Hey, you shut up. Don't take this from me.
So I do want to go talk about
good cards.
I do want to talk about the ruler that we've seen the most support of so far. We're going to go over to Dark Alice, because Dark Alice is kind of a pseudo bridging of the gap, I think, between pseudo bridging of the gap between the old style the new Valhalla, Alice Origin stuff, and this kind of new core identity, in the fact that she has Regalia triggers. So she says she has Judgment for white, black, black. Whenever a Darkness Regalia enters the field under your control, choose 1. If the Regalia is unknown Mother Goose, choose 1 again. So technically this means that you can choose the same option twice if you want. You can choose both options individually, everything else. So this is a step away from what we've seen so far, in the fact that you don't have these static 4 options of a get strangers in some way, Judgment for 0, some kind of draw card, some kind of removal. That's been kind of the static across the board. Now we have these more utilitarian, keyed towards that specific ruler with a little bit more selection in it, but we've traded that for not having Judgment for 0, which I think is interesting when we look at their backsides. But I think part of, I think up to this point, judgments themselves haven't, to me, I guess, haven't really felt super impactful. I mean, Rezard is probably the most like impactful because it just generates a body immediately. But Faria and Melgus in the same way, like they just kind of generate a random body. But the free judgment to me is like, oh, okay, cool. You just put out a 0 drop 10/10. Okay. But so to me, the fact that we're seeing a judgment of not being able to do that for free makes me think that, oh, when this flips, it's going to be more than what we've seen up to this point.
And it's like 12, 14. Can we just like pause and talk about how huge these guys are?
With Drain and Bane. Like,
why do you need Bane when you got 12 attack? Like, what are we killing? I'll give you a hint. It's other Dark Alices. Like, that's
Magna.
That's why she has 14 defense, is because like, oh, I can survive the mirror match. It's like, oh, actually, let's just give it Bane too, because why not? Like, okay, sure.
Well, the other thing is too is, you know, if we have any effects that says this card deals damage too.
Yeah.
So anyway, we're going to talk about her backside. So she is a fairy. The other thing is she's a fairy tale / wanderer. And so she says, drain Bane, enter, search your deck for any fairy tale resonator and put it into the field.
So shuffle your deck. Captain Hook, right? That's what I heard. That's what I
Stop. Get out.
Hang on, let me just
There's a blue card in this set, right? Like that we're gonna get a reprint for, right?
Just Captain Hook, but it's black, white, and 3.
All right, look, if the fanboys that have been riding Dark Alice's dick since fucking Reflect Refrain was printed can get 17 Dark Alices, I can get one more goddamn Captain Hook, all right? I had Mosasaurus, so like, you know what? Ban distortion time, so Ryan can't have any fun. I was like, you know what? That's fine. You're a bully, but that's fine. Captain Hook, all right? It's time. I'll play Dark Alice. I will.
My favorite pastime is my favorite thing to do. As long as I get to ban good cards, Ryan getting bullied is my favorite part of it all.
Yeah. So she naturally gets a fairy tale resonator from your deck and put it in the field. So obviously we've seen strangers. Any stranger that's put something into the field has always been random. So again, what we've talked about, or doesn't get anything, like it doesn't actually generate a body on field when it comes in. So it's always kind of been like, what do you get? Are you high rolling or not? Whereas this is a ruler that says, hey, what do you need right now? Like you get it. And then not only that, but she has other effects, which is, again, beyond what we've seen from strangers at this, or Regalia rulers at this point. It's always been like, they have a God Art, they're a 10/10 body, they do a thing when they enter, that's it. But like, this is a ruler that has a lot of potential, a lot of options even after they flipped. So we have pay 1 white, banish 2 light crystals. Target entity gains eternal and barrier until end of the turn, aka that thing ain't leaving unless you banish it. And then she has pay black, banish X darkness crystals, destroy all resonators with total cost X. So this is very reminiscent of old school Dark Alice, naming a cost in some kind and then banishing everything for that. And then on top of that, she has God's Art, Mother Goose Rising. That's the weirdest name for a God Art.
Mother Goose Rising Revengeance.
Yeah, right. 1 black, 1 white. Put any number of target fairy tale and or shadow resonators with different names from your graveyard into your hand. So a refill, which again makes sense for the fact that she's potentially going to be wiping all of her own stuff, because it does say destroy all resonators. It's yours as well.
Can we talk about the fact that she can grab?
I'm just like looking up fairy tales.
I did the exact same thing while I was reading this.
So excited, and then I was suddenly very unexcited.
Yeah, well, we have to see what comes out in this set, right? Because now we have 100 new cards.
Exactly.
Cool, listen, Ryan.
Glad we're on the same page.
If you can judgment her at instant speed, you can bring out Kaguya.
Yes. Right, Mike. You're absolutely right. Actually, I got kind of excited because I saw Alice Otherworldly Visitor, and I read the text, when this card enters the field from your deck, and I was like, and then it said put 2 +1/+1 counters on it, and just everything drained from me. I was like, oh my god, this could be useless.
Nope, not there.
Oh, Adam and Fairy Tale Land we brought out with this. It's a 14/14 drain. That's pretty good.
It's like, yeah, it's okay. I mean,
we have to wait. You can give him Eternal and Barrier if you want.
Yeah, I mean,
we have to assume
clapping your cheeks, then yeah, Adam Fairy Tales is not bad. But
we have to assume that she's going to get some new Fairy Tale support with this set. Obviously,
probably reprints, right? Let me just do it.
There's only 100. So remember, it's 125 cards, including rulers and stones, and there's 100 of them are new cards.
All right, so Mike, what reprint do you think we're getting for Fairy Tales? It's got to be white or black, right? It doesn't have to, but probably
it should be. Hang on, let's see. Let's
do like a.
Let's do
moving on. While these guys deep dive, I want to talk about this for a little bit. So this is a big shift to again what we've seen from a lot of rulers in the past, where when they come out onto the field, not only are they a body, not only do they generate some value, but then they also are creating more options for you to entice you to keep them alive. Up until this point, pretty much this cluster, I think outside of Magna, maybe every ruler that I've seen this entire set is once it performs its god art, you actually kind of want it to die because you want more Regalia triggers.
Here's my wish list.
Okay.
I just really want them to reprint Hansel and Gretel so you can bring it out with
the face. This is my face at you guys going into this conversation as opposed to staying on topic.
No, this is on topic.
This is our like end of episode topic question anyway.
So yeah, we'll get there. But like I do
skyscraper giant. Let's go.
I do want to talk to you guys about that in the sense of like you guys have played with the Stranger Rulers, you at least in doing some testing to be able to prepare for stuff, or Mike to do whatever Mike does. But I think we've even talked about this in commentary for different events, is outside of once they've performed their god art, there are actually matchups where you want your ruler to die. Like you want it to flip, do its thing, die, so that you get more triggers off of it. I specifically have seen people play Melgus mirrors or Melgus matches where they will intentionally throw tiny things, even though they could kill the Melgus, to block the Melgus, because they don't want to give the Melgus player more Regalia triggers. Because again, there's kind of, or like intentionally swing their Melgus into something that's going to kill it so that they can get Regalia triggers back. Whereas this ruler is the first one that, at least that we've seen, that by itself, the longer it sticks around, the more and more options you're going to have with it, which is a big shift back to what we've seen in the past of J rulers in Force of Will.
Although she doesn't generate crystals on her own on her flip side.
That is correct.
Crystal generate your Regalia. So like you play your Regalia, you get your 4 crystals or whatever, and then like doesn't the Regalia just sit there and generate crystals every turn?
At the end of each one of your turns, you get 1 light or 1 dark crystal.
Oh yeah, okay. So
but then also there's that spell that just like one of its modes is like make 4 crystals.
Yeah, but that's a lot of mana.
Like, 3. Technically what?
And also you want it interdimensional escape.
Yeah, you want it for interdimensional escape as like that's the better mode, absolutely. But like
I don't agree with that at all, actually. I think once you've got Dark Gallows Slip, your interdimensional escape is you create 4 gems and go 1, 2, 3, 4, like or whatever. Or you just like nuke their board basically, I think. But yeah.
Sure.
We can
that's a lot of mana. You have to pay black for each of those, Ryan. Don't forget that.
What?
It's pay 1 black and banish X gems.
Yeah. Oh, pay 1 black. I thought it was.
It's 1 black plus X gems as cost.
Garbage.
You looking at me telling me the crystal generation was better than the fucking interdimensional escape? You piece of garbage. You can't.
Why would I play interdimensional escape when perfect Loki exists? You absolute fool. Next question.
Anyway,
what are you doing?
Who plays perfect Loki after rotation? But I guess he's cheating. Everyone.
It's gonna rotate, and I'm gonna be like perfect Loki. I'm like, Ryan, that card rotated. I'm like, no, Kaguya rotated. You took that from me. You can't take perfect Loki too.
I just want
only one.
Looks at Judge. The judge is Jeremy. Looks back. I'll allow it.
And it's like, fine. I won't play perfect Loki. Lorite. Like, wait a
minute. Ryan permanently. That's what Ryan got for winning Worlds. Is he's permanently allowed to play with a single copy of an out-rotated card every single format.
What's the difference between Lorite and Kaguya?
Right. You don't understand. We're planning a tournament eventually where Phil Mosca is the judge, and if you can convince him of anything with enough,
I also want to have a cheaters format tournament as a charity event.
Oh my god, who's inviting Federico? Oh,
So-
did I just say that out loud?
That's not what we're talking about. We'll talk about the cheaters format some other day. But like I said,
we're talking about Lapis, the best goddamn ruler out of all these.
yeah, we're gonna talk about Lapis now because I think this guy has. I think of the three, this one is the most just like, oh, this is a J ruler. Like this is what we're back to being like.
I can't find the ruler side. Can you link it in the chat?
I'm just gonna read it out loud because there's no like image of it. So Gil Lapis is a wanderer. His judgment is Black Moon. Whenever a darkness regalia enters under your field under your control, choose one. If the regalia is World Ender, because remember he doesn't have Heteroclite Excalibur yet, choose one again. Look at the top 3 cards of your deck, reveal a card from among them, put it into your hand, rest on the bottom of your deck in any order. So essentially a mini Cheshire Cat. Or name a card, you gain Limit Break that card. Now, I want to explain to people what Limit Break is, at least from the concept of what we've seen so far on his backside, what it seems to be kind of like. There was an old mechanic back in Lapis Cluster called Seal, which was once you hit a certain number of stones, which was the requirement, suddenly that card like gained a bunch of additional text. Limit Break appears to be something similar to that, only it's a specific card and it's a specific kind of activation in order to be able to unseal it. It's not a passive like Seal was, where it's like, oh, I'm at 6 stones, everything with Seal 6 is suddenly active. This seems to be like there's going to be effects that allow you to choose a named card, and once you've chosen that card, suddenly it's gonna essentially gain that additional text. But then, so not only does he have that, but he has an additional line of text, which says you may pay the attribute cost of minions and moon arts with any will. This is also a big change to the other rulers that we've had in the past, which is that have had this kind of like filtering kind of color correction. They've always said with will of any attribute. This just says any will, which means that moon will can be used to pay for the attribute cost of his minions and moon arts. And time will, which is rotated.
Wait, so I can pay like a 5 cost minion with any will, like 1 moon, because it's any will?
No,
Judge?
you have to pay for 5 moon to make it happen.
Total cost? Judge?
It says you may pay the attribute cost with any will, as in you may
so
pay.
if the attribute cost is green, red, I can pay it with moon. Just moon, any will, right?
Hold on, if you produce one colorless, one void, can you use that?
If you produce one void, yeah, void. It doesn't.
Yeah. All right,
Void can be used to pay for the attribute cost of minions and moon arts because it is will. It is not will of any attribute.
I already knew where this was going, and
you can play Tron Gil Lapis
that by going down a rabbit hole when Mike Rance was on the call.
You accept the consequence. The other thing is you'll just never be able to perform Judgments of Gil Lapis, which we all know is what you really want to be doing. You do care. You do care, Mike. You definitely do care.
Let's talk about the J ruler side
because we're going to talk about the J ruler side. So also this is.
I don't want the J ruler side. I want a meme.
Okay, so the J ruler side is also a wanderer. It is a base stat 12/12 with flying that on enter search for a minion, put it into the field. If you do, you gain limit break the name of that minion. So the minion that you bring into field is going to have all of its text essentially. And then if you choose to limit break Gil Lapis, he'll gain +8/+8 and precision. So suddenly you have a 20/20 with precision and flying, which by itself is already better than Magna. But then also says tap destroy target resonator until the end of the game. You may play all God's Art abilities you played this game an additional time. So one first thing to note is that you have to have successfully performed the God Art at least once to be able to recharge it, essentially. Once you've played it once, you can recharge it as many times as you want, but you have to get it to go off one time first.
You can't just like stack up, oh, I get 4 activations of this God Art, and it doesn't work like that.
It doesn't work like that. You have to at least cast it once, and then you can recharge it. And then it's his God Art is Primogenitor's Ambition. It is 1 black, 1 moon. this card gains resonators your opponent controls gain -4/-4. So one thing to note in my first reading of this card, which was incorrect, was that if you killed the J ruler, the stat neg went away. I have been corrected that this is the same language that Valentina 2 had, and it will not go away if you kill Gil Lapis, because the Gil Lapis front and back are technically viewed as the same card, and Mike Rance left as soon as I talked about Valentina, which is really weird.
I know, it's usually the opposite happens.
Yeah, usually the opposite happens. So the one thing to note is that every single time you successfully get a -4/-4 off with Gil Lapis, that is permanent.
And it's stacked.
And it stacks. So because of his ability to recharge his God Arts.
Hope you like not playing cards.
So
yeah.
Crazy to me. But like, this is what I'm talking about in regards to, like, this is a J ruler that you do not want to die. Because if you can't, and I also think it's kind of cool or helpful, I would say, that he still costs will to judgment. Like, he doesn't have a judgment mode or 0. We'll have to see what his regalia does. If his regalia plays for God Arts, then you're a little bit kind of safe either way to be able to do at least the God Art at least once. But, you know, if he doesn't have swiftness, right, and you somehow find a way, at this point in time, we have 3 J ruler target insta kills. We have
there's a couple.
We have
Sort of
bloody.
Lament,
We have bloody break. We have bloody break. We have
Sort of Lament.
Sort of lament. Which one's that? Remind me.
The 3-cost Moonbeam the rune.
Oh, right, the rune. Sort of. I wasn't thinking runes. My bad.
Shut up, Ryan.
I don't know how to tell you
the
this.
rune.
You're not allowed to play many rulers that don't energize Kaguya.
So the Sword of Lament is one of them. We also have the Magna kill spell, because technically Gil Lapis is an entity of total cost 0. So you can use Machina's like suppressing order to just reveal it. You don't even have to have another machine in hand. You do have to have a machine, but it doesn't matter what cost it is, and you can kill Gil Lapis with suppression order. And we have Utgard Loki is the other one that is just like targeted J ruler hate.
Instant speed discard.
Instant speed J ruler hate. So there are avenues to be able to stop him from getting to the -8/-8. Obviously, that's something that this deck is going to want to proceed with. But like, this is a ruler where the longer you let it go onto the field, the more likely you are just going to lose the game. And we have definitely had rulers like that in the past, where if you did not kill them ASAP, you were screwed.
So here's something interesting. So his ability to, to make things like to make resonators gain -4/-4 and then stack that means that your opponent is, after a couple of triggers, your opponent is completely incentivized to flip their J ruler to try and either combat him. But then you realize that he's black, so he can play Utgarda Loki to counter the J ruler.
Oh, sure. He is
also he's a flying
2020.
He's gonna beat up every single ruler in the format. I don't think there is a ruler
Dark
that
Alice.
survives him. No, but Dark Alice like kills him too, but she also dies, and his stat neg stays. Like, Magna is only a 2020. I don't know exactly
only a 2020.
It's, when you're looking at the Gil Lapis, it's like only. Even like the Faria Voltron is like a 14/14.
It can get up to 24/24 pretty easily.
Okay.
You need
need a resonator on the
Charlotte.
field
You need
that?
Charlotte. You would have to have three. You'd have to have 3 Gil Lapis triggers on the stack to kill a Charlotte. Because she has 10 defense, so you'd have to get down to you'd have to get down to -12. So Faria Voltron can actually kill this guy pretty easily until he gets to minus, because at that point in time, like, he kind of needs to be killing the Faria, but at the same, so he can't really afford to like tap recharge, but also at the same time
format. What you're saying.
There we go.
Decks beat the Voltron decks. The Voltron decks beat the Gil Lapis, and the Gil Lapis never plays cards to lose to Kaguya, so Gil Lapis beats Kaguya. There you go, boys.
There you go.
Welcome to the next
Solved.
Done.
But Ryan, where does Magna? No. Triangle.
But I think, you speak
with some guy trying to get into the triangle.
you speak to, again, like I'm talking about with the way you can look at these 3 rulers that we haven't looked at before, right? All of the 7 Kings rulers up to this point are the real power of the deck comes from the deck, right? The J ruler themselves, the J ruler front side, the J ruler flip side are just kind of like, yeah, these are just helping my deck to do what my deck wants to be doing. But the J ruler themselves is just kind of like meh. These three are the first three rulers where you're just like, oh, okay, like they have a lot of oomph by themselves. Playing it is going to feel good. Keeping it alive is going to feel good. And you are feeling like you're going to have some oomph there, which is a really, really big change all the way back to New Valhalla. I don't think, outside of Brunhild, I can't really consistently think of one of the rulers from New Valhalla that you're just like, oh yeah, I really want to flip this because I just feel super good to keep this thing alive. Hanzo, you want to flip it so it enters once and flips your sealing scroll back down. Lucifer, you wanted to flip so that you could... Lucifer, so that you wanted to flip so that you could make your opponent discard stuff. Isis was the only like Voltron style deck because of her ability to like push through damage by burning shit out of the way. That's for sure. But like Brunhild, you wanted her to be a big body in the air. That felt great if you kept her, and she also generated another value, right? So,
and just like on that point, to talk about how Forcible thought of Brunhild, like her support in DBV was, kill your ruler without ever flipping it. That is the support for Brunhild in DBV. Like it wasn't
right.
It was not playable.
So I think this speaks to, I mean, looking back to the old J rulers, right? So like Sylvia herself on her front side enabled your deck to be a little bit different than what it was, but you were playing it a certain way. And then you flipped Sylvia, and the longer she stuck around, the better and better and better you felt. Like you got to suddenly you were using burn spells and recharging. You were crashing your guys into other guys and playing more guys. Like the J ruler itself feels impactful throughout its existence on the board. New Valhalla and Alice Origins up to this point have been very much, you flip your ruler, it's done its job, it's dead. Which was very different than the Force of Will of entirely up till now, right? So to see it go back to that, first off, I think they've done a very good job. I'm concerned about Gil Lapis, but I think they've done a very good job of providing these guys with a good amount of power to subsequent the fact that they're now playing up against a format that has extra decks. Right? But as a design philosophy, going back to that identity of like, okay, if I flip my J ruler, I want him to survive. I want him to be there until the end of the game. I want to be winning the game with this card. And the longer I stick it around there, which is just not what we've seen so far. And I don't know, everybody I've talked to has said that they're very excited about that. Not even from the perspective of just like the ease of making their board not as clustered by not having a bajillion decks, but even like the feel of it feels good.
We do love those good feels.
I did get the chance to play a game of Epic Stories at the Grand Prix this weekend, and that felt like I just felt naked just having, I had two rulers, but I didn't have two hands. And I was like, oh, these are my 5 cards. Like, all right, play Tama, draw a card. Oh, thank God. Okay, play some cards that aren't Tama. I have 2 cards in hand. Where's my other 5 cards? Where's the 15 cards I get to draw by turn 3 in New Frontiers? I don't know what's going on here.
Playing Epic Stories without a Divinity ruler, because
I haven't.
Babe.
It's fine. He's just playing Green Dragon Lumia. It's fine.
I built it before.
No, don't let him do that. Don't let Ryan play Green Dragon.
It's fine. He plays against me. I flip Abdul on 2, and he loses. It's fine.
Dude, I just got beat by I'm a fucking Epic Stories deck, but on turn 2, I'm gonna go Invitation to Purgatory, Undying into Sigurd, and I'm like, wow. Yeah, you get to do that every single game. That's really fun. This 60-card format is really interesting and interactive, I guess.
Correct. I'm really glad Invitation to Purgatory was printed. Anywho.
But I would be interested to hear from the two of you guys. I mean, both of you played at varying times, but both of you played before Extra Deck stuff. You've now played all through Extra Deck stuff, and now we're seeing the end of Extra Deck stuff. So just kind of your thoughts about this transition.
I don't know. Well, my biggest thing is I don't know what the fuck they're gonna have to do for design going forward, because they've printed 9 Extra Deck rulers in this cluster, and it's like we've seen.
It's fine. I really don't see Stranger decks as an extra deck in the same way that I saw Divinity or even like Fox or Scheherazade. Because the way that you interact with your Stranger deck is just so different. Like, it's not just always there. You still need to invest resources to get access to those resources. It's really almost like playing a 50-card deck, but it's like you're gating the power level behind certain cards. It's still random. You're not getting blown out because they always start the opening. They don't always start the game with Black Wizard in their opening hand. If they just
they don't always start with an Explore the Unknown. Yeah,
it's just like, because even though it is an extra deck, because it's not the Yu-Gi-Oh style, oh, let me just Synchro Summon because I have 2 dudes on the field, or let me just Divinity because I have it in my opening hand. It really doesn't have that same feel as the Fox, as the Scheherazade, as the Divinity. So I'm really not too concerned about like those Strangers moving forward. I think they're just kind of going to be like a cool gimmick what we have.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that.
And
not inherently more powerful than what we're seeing from April.
It's not like the Strangers themselves make your deck more powerful the way that Divinity does. Like, Divinity was used in Wanderer because you have so many powerful cards, and it's just the most consistent way to access them. It's just the best possible cards you could be playing. And, like, Strangers obviously don't have that. I think that the only thing is that rulers going forward have to be focused a lot more on intrinsic value, just because of how much overall power that Strangers decks can generate. But they don't necessarily have to generate it.
I mean, I would look at these 3 rulers, and if the clusters were reversed, if we were going like if AO, so like say for instance, DBV was actually the 4th set of Alice Origins cluster. This is our 4th set of New Valhalla cluster. Stranger rulers are going to rotate. We're going to keep Divinity in these guys. Absolutely. Far and away, I'm just going to keep playing Divinity, right? Because I'm going to be opening with my hand with an opening 5. I think this is the time to make this transition, because I think you're right. With Strangers, like, I'm building a Stranger deck, and even when I'm building the deck, I'm looking at the Stranger deck, and I'm like, what would be cool cards to get here? But I'm not like, oh my gosh, I have to build my deck so that my Stranger ratios are perfect, that I have to pick exactly the right perfect Strangers. Like, it's just kind of a, like, bonus that, like, my stuff is gated. Like, it's gated and it's good, but it's just kind of there.
Like,
whereas
when I'm building like certain decks, it's like, okay, well, I'm building an Arla deck, but I know Brunhild exists in the format. How do I beat Odin's Judgment? I literally cannot play this deck unless I'm capable of beating Odin's. Or I'm playing a Divinity deck. I need to be aware that Sealing Scroll exists. I literally need to build my deck with the capability to not lose the game on the spot to Sealing Scroll.
Right.
If my deck doesn't beat Black Wizard on turn 1, that's fine, because there's still only like a 1 in 5 chance that a Wizard deck builds it on turn 1. Like, there's no Stranger that I just, like, because it exists, I inherently want to play a Stranger deck because of it. It's not like, oh, I really need to play Arla because it gets this Stranger, and like, it's just like that doesn't happen. It's just like, oh, I'm playing the deck because I'm doing Arla things, or I'm doing Wizard things, or I'm doing Prisia things, and then like the Stranger deck is just like, get that too. You get some more powerful code.
Which is why I also really like Magna, because Magna makes us look at Strangers Magna makes us look at Strangers in a very different way, right? So like Strangers as a whole have been kind of like, oh, well, this would be really cool if I wheel into it, or like quote unquote a win more button. I think of like Baroost in Prisia, right? Like if Prisia's playing Baroost with Double Awakening, they've probably already killed you. It's just kind of like, oh, this is a flashy way for them to do it. But now we have Magna, who gets to look at, like, what if this card is in my main deck? What if it's in, like, when am I going to need it? How am I going to get to it if I need it? Do I even need it? Is it a Stranger that's worth playing? You know, there are certain Strangers that I think of that, like, I'm trying to, like, Triton, right? So, like, is Triton a body that I would want to have in my main deck of if I could play it? Probably not.
I don't even want them like 10 Strangers.
Right. Other Water J Resonators. I'm gonna go with no.
No, right? So, but like you think about that, and like when we were playing Valentina, like that was a Stranger that you would think of as like a, oh, well, you know, sometimes it'll be beneficial to me. But now I can look at it as if, okay, if that card's in my main deck, is it actually worthy of me taking my time to invest to try to play? As opposed to, well, if I get it, and that's kind of cool, I guess. Which is a big... I think it's honestly kind of a nice little end cap to the cluster, because suddenly it's making us go back and re-look at all the Strangers again and say like, oh, well, if I couldn't randomize them, if I could pick choice, what are we going to see? What is it good? Is it bad? Like, how would I get to it? Stuff like that, which I think is a really nice homage to the cluster, while also like giving you something that is a unique experience to everything else that's been in the cluster, which, to go back to the old days of the old rulers, was what it was about. Like, every deck you played, every ruler you played had a feel to it. Every ruler you played had like a really unique style to it that you were trying to build towards. And so when you sat down across from a Blazer deck, when you sat down across from a Feasting deck, not Turbo Guyver, when you sat down across from like a Feasting deck, when you sat down across from a Rezard deck, when you, like, in the old days, you were like, oh, cool, I can already tell kind of what the vibe of your deck is going to be, and it's going to be radically different than when I played against a different ruler last match. And so I think with jokes on you, Triton makes it so Magna doesn't die to Gil because he's a Water J ruler. Jeremy,
power play.
But I think it's cool for us to be going back to that, and I for one am excited to see. I mean, I have enjoyed the past two clusters playing casually. I mean, I haven't played competitively since New Valhalla dropped, outside of like local events that I got Ryan to drive with me to. But I think I am looking forward to being able to again go back to locals and see 8 different rulers, all with very different vibes, and people really enjoying that part of it again, which I think has been missing. So, yeah.
Do you think the power level is still very high, though?
Oh, yeah, I agree. Wholeheartedly. Which is
like the Infinity competitive power level on a ruler, and it's like, ooh.
Yeah, but then the question becomes with that, when we lose New Valhalla, will the support suite be enough to make that entire deck still feel like it could compete with New Valhalla, right? Because I think we can all agree across the board that like DBV has probably been some of the highest power level we've had in a very, very, very long time. Still to this day, it continues to define metas. It still continues to define meta. And outside of that, there is really strong stuff in AO, but like all of the AO decks outside of Arla are still just playing DBV stuff anyway. So the question becomes, when you lose New Valhalla as a cluster, but you gain this powerful J ruler, is the support suite of all of Alice Origins, like, is that overall power level enough to make it still feel like it's just as powerful as when DBV was around? Or is the overall power level of your deck going to feel a little bit lower so that you're more incentivized to rely on the power level of your J ruler? That's a toss-up. We'll have to see what the support suite is, especially in 100 new cards.
I mean, for me, like, having played like full power DBV against Arla, specifically Arla, I didn't get to play against Rezard, but like also you can like watch the Rezard tapes from the top 8. It's like the DBV stuff is like really, really powerful. Rezard not so much because it's got, Alter, it's got DBV stuff, but like the Arla deck, like just flipping and putting in all those strangers is like really hard to beat, even like with DBV stuff, right? Sure. It's like what's scary to me is like when we lose stuff and Arla doesn't lose anything. Like the litmus test for can I beat Arla is, can I clear your board of strangers that you put out at instant speed and then also kill an Eternal guy? Like if you can do that, like you are beating so many decks that just want to play mid range in general, and that's like where I'm a little scared. I'm wondering if like Gil Lapis is actually just the answer to that, where it becomes there has to be like some kind of acceleration for him, because like he doesn't have the judge for 0. So if you want to actually just go flip -8 you and then maybe on tap and get -12, like you need to have like 7 mana. So that's like not super feasible. It would need to be some kind of control deck. So I wonder if we get like fog effects to say, Arla did its thing, let me just like fog you for a turn. You're like, wow, I have 7 strangers on the board, but pass turn. Maybe that's where we go. But it is like power level of like Prisia last format or last set, and Arla now is competitive without stuff.
Absolutely.
Like, that's terrifying.
And so we have to, well, like I said, we have to see if the suite of support shifts it so that the main deck itself can keep up, and then it keeps up enough that you can rely on the power of the J ruler to finish the game, or if you know it's going to struggle. Like, yeah, that's a really powerful J ruler, but it's going to struggle because it doesn't necessarily have all the tools that it needs to be able to stabilize to the point of using it.
Right.
And so that's the big thing. It's the end of a cluster. We're also increasing in set size. We're going up to 36-pack boxes, which is also a big change back to the old days. But I read someone talk about the other day about how the power creep is so intense that in order to keep up, you're going to have to continue to be crazy. I think losing New Valhalla into this support suite, into Alice Origins as a cluster, I think will be a good indication or a way for us to see of like, is it actually that we truly need to spike everything so hard just to keep up, or have we kind of like re-established baseline, right? So now we can kind of have like a more flatter curve, essentially. More flatter. It's terrible grammar.
Flatter,
but I think that's the big trick, right? Because I think of the big necks now, and you're right. I look at Machina, I look at Prisia, and I look at Machina, Prisia, and Arla, and Melgus, which are traditionally the more aggressive of these decks in this format. And a lot of them rely purely on AO, right? They don't really go beyond that. And so you do have that litmus test of, you know, in the format where DBV doesn't exist, does the power level of the support suite for these non-aggro rulers stack up to what the aggro rulers are trying to do? I don't necessarily know that means that we are power spiking to that point. I just think that means that we're shifting to, like, we got to be able to deal with fast stuff faster, which I think we've seen a lot of that in the form of our removal suite has become a lot cheaper. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out of that, and how it plays out in terms of what rulers even look like. I mean, the old Dark Alice on enter would just board wipe your opponent, especially considering how she called her number at resolution, right? So you're like, what are you gonna do? I'm gonna call something, you're gonna lose it. That deck arguably, even back then, did struggle against aggro stuff, right? So Gil has this really powerful support suite up at it, potentially being able to stabilize and tell the aggro decks, you're done, go home. But is it going to be able to compete fast enough to be able to stay alive and deal with what that deck has traditionally had problems with in Force of Will's history of getting blown out too soon, like not getting the stat negs soon enough? We'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah.
I'm excited for it, though. I think that's the biggest thing, is that, like, in seeing these three rulers, in knowing that it's going to be so different to play these rulers than it has been for the past 2 years, I'm very, very excited.
Yeah, definitely feels like a return. Definitely feels like, you know, the company's very much starting to come into their own, which is nice. Like, the Strangers definitely felt like the bridge between these two kind of concepts of, like, you know, here's an extra deck that I have access to. You don't have access to it immediately, but you have access to it sort of incrementally throughout the game. And now we're like, all right, so you don't have access to it anymore, but you're going to still gain incremental value.
Right. It's kind of like a stepping down from runes.
Yep.
Like runes were like, huh! And then everything else just kind of fell off. And now we kind of have to like step it. We had to use this cluster to kind of step it back down to the old style so that people weren't just like, why am I even playing this cluster?
Yeah, exactly. That was pretty accurate. But
go ahead.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say, I think if this is an indicator for anything, we might actually see Regalia triggers go, especially if we're losing Regalia going into the next cluster.
Yeah,
I'm
sure.
very excited to see what they do with, like, you know, if they're not tied to a gimmick anymore. Like, it definitely feels like the game has been tied to its gimmicks for such a long time now, but
what if
going into the next cluster, if they're able to, like, kind of shake that off and make every ruler feel unique in its playstyle and not just like, I've drew this 2-cost card, I'm going to play it and gain incremental value. That's kind of how the Strangers have been going.
Lumia, that'll solve all of our problems.
So we've heard from Ryan, we want Hook back, we want Lumia back.
We want at the same time.
We want
Keep it
we want Kaguya to stay around. We want Ploki to come back. We want Lorite to come back.
You can also get Lorite back because you can stop my Lumia trigger. That finds everyone cool with that.
No, get out.
All right, so check this out, right? Gil Lapis does allude to his ability to pay for moon arts with any attribute or any will, right?
Correct.
We're talking about that?
Correct.
So, Kaguya's moon beam butterfly.
Hey, shut up.
Moon art.
X drop spells? X spells? Bring back X spells?
Of that in Magna, which will let you get any stranger of your one-ofs as you play Kaguya's Moonbeam Butterfly.
I'd be down for X X cost spells coming back. We have seen a couple of. We have seen we saw Charm of the Princess. We had Charm of the Princess as a reprint X spell, but we haven't seen X spells for quite some time. So I'd be interested to see that come back.
I want to see Schrodinger's Observation as a mage. Mage arts.
Yeah,
that'd be sick.
Yeah, it would be cool. There's a lot of cool stuff, and I think the consensus that I've been talking to, not just among the three of us, but among people, have been saying like these rulers are exciting. Like these rulers and what they kind of potentially represent are very, very exciting. And so that's great. Baba, I hear you, bucket sitter. I do want to say that there was the conversation. We have to close it here for tonight. There was the conversation topic brought up of what do we think about the new card layout. I want to cut away from that opinion specifically because tomorrow, I filmed it today. It's edited. It's uploading for tomorrow. You will see my unboxing of the brand new demo deck. I was able to get my hands on a set of the demo decks, so there will be a video here on the channel tomorrow talking about that, kind of going over, sharing my thoughts about that. We could get into a very heated debate, but we're that video I think does talk about my as a content creator and as someone who's been playing it since literally the beginning, kind of my thoughts pro and con about the new layout change. So I'll leave you to watch that video. Because I think that will give a good discussion point, and I kind of want to have the discussion of it on that video. But regardless, this has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you guys so much for people in the chat. It is wonderful to have you. For those of you, go ahead, Mike. Go ahead.
I have one more thing for people in the chat.
Okay.
So we have the Uwu Imul now.
All right, bye guys. It's fun.
Don't mute me, Jeremy.
I'm not muting. I'm gonna give you a shot here.
You've got like 3 brain cells left. If they all die, I'm just leaving the call. So
I've got 2. Shut up.
Right, go ahead.
So they got the Uwu Imul. Now
is this going to be what the actual emote should have been?
Yes, the actual emote should have been Uwoomer.
Okay, so
towel.
Well, you kicked Ryan off before I could do my send off, but anywho, thank you to everybody who's been watching. I was joined by Ryan Miles. Unfortunately, Brandon Fremont didn't make it joining us, but also been joined by
in the chat. Come on, boys.
Some by Mike Rants. As always, if you liked what we did here tonight, you can go ahead and click that join button down below. Mike, I'm trying to do the end card stuff. I'm gonna kick you from the call.
Continue your spiel.
Okay. But if you like what we did here, if you want to continue to support us to help us do all kinds of cool stuff, you can click that join button down below, as well as just click that subscribe button and watch the stuff we put out, including a new feature match this Wednesday, which will be a very fun match between a Faria 5 Heroes deck, and we're finally getting to see a little Tron played here on the channel, so be on the lookout for that. But until next time, this has been DMO73 and Mike Rants saying, class dismissed. Have a good night, everybody.